Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. My name is Sharang Thaimade. I represent Seed Global Education. And in this webinar, over the next 60 odd minutes, you're going to learn about unlocking funding opportunities if you are planning to pursue your master's MBA from the United States of America. And we've got Kara Trippi, who represents Michigan State University, the Broad College of Business. So, as we start off, and we already have about 40 odd people, we expect many more of you to join. If you've got friends who are joining this session, let them know that we've started at sharp 8 p.m. in India, or if you're joining us from outside of India, then we've already started this session. Do let us know which city you're joining in from, so we get a little bit of hang of the audience. Please let us know in the chat box which city you are joining us from. All right, we've got Yogesh who's joined us from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Welcome from New Delhi, from Accra in Ghana. We've got Ishwinder from Ambala. Audrey is joining in from Indonesia. Welcome. We've got more folks from Accra. Now it's going quite quickly, but we've got folks from Lagos, Nigeria, Accra, Delhi. New Delhi, India, Mumbai. Samruddha is here from Mumbai as well. George is here from Nairobi in Kenya. Nawaz is here from Bangladesh. Welcome. Sayed is here from Bangalore in India. Wonderful. Hi, Ernest here from South Africa. Ayush is from Mumbai as well. So we've got folks here. Naima has joined in from Pakistan, and we've got folks here from Egypt as well. So not just India, not just West Africa. We've got folks here from all over the world. Samdesh is here from Kolkata as well. I think that's a wonderful crowd already. Harsha here from Hyderabad. Firstly, thank you so much for taking our time to join us this afternoon, this evening. It is around 8 p.m. here in India. Just as I'm saying, if you have some of your friends that are also keen to pursue their master's or an MBA program and have registered for the session, do let them know that we have started. I'm hoping you've already got your reminders on your WhatsApp messages and your emails. Having said that, I'm going to do a quick introduction of our panelists today, of our guest today. We've got Kara Trippi. She is the Director of Admissions at Michigan State University's Broad College of Business for the full-time MBA program. She's been with in higher education for over a decade, and she's dedicated to helping students achieve their academic goals. That's what we love to do at in higher education. We want to help you reach your academic and your overall career goals. She oversees recruitment, admissions, and program development. Her diverse background in education gives her a unique perspective on the challenges and opportunities that today's students face. And she loves spending time with her family, which means she's a family person as well. More folks here from Sukriti's joined us from Pune in India. So, once again, thank you so much for taking out time to join us here today. We will be expecting more people as we go along. We've got about 75 of you that are here already. So that is highly impressive, and we thank you for doing that. Less of me. You don't want to learn, hear more from me. You want to hear from the panelists, and she's going to take us through different funding opportunities. If you are planning to pursue your master's or MBA and expense or cost is something that you worry about, then please do remember that universities and different parties have a lot of opportunities that will help you out in terms of funding, be it scholarships, be it loans. I don't want to talk about that. That is all part of Kara's presentation. So she's going to be taking you through a little bit about how you can fund your higher education journey in the US. Thank you so much, Kara, for joining us, and over to you.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully everybody can see it. I appreciate being here today. I know that funding is a question that I am asked about constantly, whether I'm talking to domestic students or international students. Obviously, international students have additional costs because typically they are leaving their home country and coming to the United States to pursue their education. So we'll go through some more, I'll say, generic aspects most institutions will offer to students. I'm going to sprinkle in a little bit about Michigan State just because that's my wheelhouse. I've been at the institution now for a little over 5.5 years, always working in the MBA space, and MBA is always changing, and the opportunities for funding are always changing as well. So this is a good snapshot of what the institutions can typically help you with regarding funding. And then, of course, how you're going to want to tailor your application to maximize that funding as well. So a little bit about Michigan State. We are a very large Midwest institution, and that means we have a lot of resources for students. If you're looking at large institutions, typically the resources are going to be abundant because currently we have over 52,000 students right now at Michigan State. So as you can imagine, many of those students are looking for funding opportunities. Many of those students engage in endowed scholarships and fellowships. So again, with a large institution comes large resources. The College of Business is great because we are the largest college out of the 17 here at Michigan State University. And when you're looking at graduate programming, at least for Michigan State, you get the best out of both worlds, right? We aim to bring in 60 to 80 students every fall for our MBA programs. And then, of course, you have that small, intimate setting on a big, quintessential college campus. So I get asked a lot, what do I care about when I'm looking for not only admission, but when I'm looking to make scholarship, fellowship decisions? And truly, all admissions will care about everything, right? This is not just a Michigan State viewpoint. Any admissions director that I talk to cares about everything in your application, right? Through a very holistic lens. So there are common mistakes that we see candidates make that can hurt their admissions and their scholarship opportunities. And I'll talk a little bit about those down the line. But I really want to highlight what you're paying for when you're coming to a graduate program, right? Obviously, you're paying for tuition. So at Michigan State and most U.S. institutions, there's going to be in-state and out-of-state tuition. There's also going to be international tuition. At Michigan State, international students pay out-of-state tuition. So there's no difference between that. As an international student, though, typically you are required to pay health insurance in addition to tuition, and there's an international student fee that typically is about $150 US dollars. So again, when you're looking at prices of graduate programming, you want to be thinking not only about tuition, but are there added fees that I need to pay outside of tuition? Additionally, tuition does not include room and board. So you'll want to think, where do I want to live? If you're looking at institutions in Los Angeles, New York City, even Chicago, the cost of living is going to be much greater than coming to East Lansing, Michigan, right? So in Los Angeles, you could pay $4,000 a month for an apartment, but here in East Lansing, you could pay $900 a month for an apartment, right? So you want to keep that into consideration when you're looking at funding your graduate program. Because tuition is just kind of the top of the iceberg. Now, many institutions for full-time MBA and some graduate programs will offer funding packages, right? And that's the easiest way to call it. Here at Michigan State, for our full-time MBA program, we offer cash awards ranging from $4,000 to full tuition scholarships. We offer in-state tuition waivers. So that means out-of-state and international students pay in-state tuition. So that saves the candidate about $20,000 a year. We also have graduate assistantships. So this means you typically work for the institution, so myself, the program team, for about 10 hours a week, and then in exchange, you get 9 credit hours at the graduate tuition rate paid for. You also get a monthly stipend, so that ranges depending upon your background. If you have a graduate degree already, you get a little bit more money every month than somebody who doesn't have a graduate degree, and you automatically get health insurance as well. So graduate assistantships become a pretty lucrative position on campus. At Michigan State, we have over 4,000 graduate assistantships available through the MBA space. We typically award 9 to 12 per intake year. So I'll talk a little bit more about graduate assistantships as well, because they become, you know, a tipping point for international students. But when you're looking at these scholarships, a lot of questions I get is, how do I qualify for these, right? How do I make sure that I can get the most money when I'm getting admitted? And really, most institutions are going to base their scholarships and fellowships off of merit-based profiles, not need-based profiles. So that's where it becomes the admissions profile that you're submitting for your application and your scholarship profile become very intertwined with one another. And it's important to put your best foot forward on your admissions application, because that's typically where those scholarship dollars are going to follow, okay? And I'm going to talk a bit about the application here in a few moments, because our application is very similar to most applications at our peer institutions. But a little bit more about external graduate assistant roles. So a lot of times I get asked, hey, I didn't get a graduate assistantship from the MBA. Are there any other roles that I can qualify for? As I had mentioned, there are about 3,000 to 4,000 graduate assistantships at Michigan State University. Any big institution is also going to offer graduate assistantships as well. When I went through my graduate degree program, I went to a smaller in-state institution and also had a graduate assistantship, okay? So they are readily available. You just typically need to be a graduate student pursuing a graduate program to be eligible. Now, there typically is not a place where all graduate assistantships are posted, right? That would be really nice if there are, but it really takes a lot of work on the candidate's behalf to look for graduate assistantships outside of the MBA space. So I did screenshot 2 examples of what an external graduate assistantship would look like and what that posting would look like. So you see one from University Housing. There's quite a few available. And then another one is a graduate assistantship that I was emailed directly from a partner on campus looking for 2 MBA students to partake in this graduate assistantship. If we do get emailed from campus partners, we send them out to all of our current MBA students to apply to. That happens a couple times a year, but really it takes the student doing some research. So reaching out to the library, reaching out to student athletics, reaching out to, you know, the College of Arts and Sciences to see if there's any graduate assistantships available. Now, graduate assistantships are not teaching assistantships. These are 2 different things. So a lot of times students will say, I'm interested in doing you know, a teaching assistantship and grading faculty members' paper and, you know, teaching for them when they can't come to class. Graduate assistantships are typically you're working on behalf of a program or a department. You're not teaching. I don't know any current MBA student who has a teaching assistantship because their class schedule does not coincide with faculty's class schedules, okay? So again, graduate assistantships are extremely common in graduate education, regardless of the institution. Now, outside of the MBA, students can qualify for funding as well. So again, when you submit your application, the admissions committee makes scholarship and fellowship decisions from MBA funded endowments. However, there are many endowments outside of the MBA space, and you're going to see this at other institutions as well. So MSU has an office called the Office of International Students and Scholars. I did do a little screenshot. Most institutions are going to have a very similar office for international based students. That being said, these are to subsidize your offer, right? So typically these scholarships are not going to be full tuition scholarships, but they might be a scholarship for $5,000 a year, right? It might be a scholarship for $2,500 a year. Currently, if you look at this website, there's about 30 scholarships available for international students at the graduate level. Not many people know about this resource. So again, it takes some digging on the candidate's behalf, but there's many external scholarships outside of the MBA space. I also encourage you to look at scholarship.com, chag.com. There's a lot of scholarships out there that, you know, are kind of silly. Like if you're left-handed and born in October, you can qualify for this scholarship. Again, it takes some work on your behalf. I always tell students to treat it like a full-time job. Apply to as many scholarships as possible. If you are accepted for 2, that is more money than you started with, right? So make it almost like a part-time job for yourself to apply to scholarships. OISS also has emergency funding. Again, this is not going to cover your full tuition scholarship, but let's say you get pneumonia and you are not able to pay rent at your apartment for that month, right? Because all of our full-time MBA students don't work unless they have a graduate assistantship or an on-campus job. Maybe they can't make ends meet that month. They do have emergency funding that you can file for as well. Now, I know international students typically don't qualify for FAFSA. I did see some students say they were from like Kansas and North Carolina. If you are a US citizen or a perm res, you can file for FAFSA and that will help with some loans. But if you are not, unfortunately, you don't qualify for federal government funding. However, there are a few alternative sources for funding for international students, and they are available on the MSU Office of Financial Aid. Every single institution in the US is going to have an Office of Financial Aid. It's really important that if you have questions about loans, that you reach out to the Office of Financial Aid. I know for international students, Prodigy, Empowered, Discover tends to be a popular option for student loans. I very much caution you to look at the loan agreements because some of those companies can be a little bit loan sharky, as we say, and the interest rates can be extremely high, like 13 to 15%. You also want to make sure that you're looking at the payback time because sometimes students need to pay back their loan agreement within a year of graduating. And that could be really challenging depending upon the salary and the outcome based upon your MBA degree, right? Not everybody gets employed 3 months after graduation. So make sure that you're looking at the loan agreement before you sign on the dotted line. MSU's financial aid office definitely has resources for students who are looking at taking out loans, whether you're domestic or international. So I very much encourage you to make that your first stop if you don't receive the scholarship package that you're hoping. Now, I mentioned on-campus jobs. On-campus jobs tends to be a subsidy, right? Or again, it's not going to pay for your full tuition, but if you need spending money for groceries or, you know, maybe you want to go to a conference that costs a little bit of money. Many of our international students will engage in on-campus jobs. You can work 20 hours a week through an on-campus position as an international student. Every single institution is going to have on-campus jobs. Here at Michigan State, our on-campus jobs are typically posted on what we call Handshake. Most institutions are going to have a profile where you can find jobs that are needed. These jobs could be in food services, cashiers, lab attendants, research aides. So it really is just dependent. Again, MSU has over 52,000 students. There's many things happening on campus that need to support those students. And a lot of times we turn to other students to help with that support as well. So I do know quite a few of our MBA students work for MSU Athletics as a ticket taker at a football game. I know some of them work at the Wharton Center for Performing Arts, so they get to see a Broadway show as well as work there. So there are some really cool jobs that you can partake in for some extra spending cash. So I want to jump back to the admissions process, because again, the admissions process doubles typically as your application and application for scholarships. Okay. Most application processes are going to be very similar to one another. So there are a few things about the MSU scholarship, the few things about the application process that are a little bit different than peer institutions, but mostly we have a very similar process. So for us, and I'm sorry, I'm looking at two screens. I don't want to block anything. I was realizing probably my camera was blocking some of the screens. For us, you're going to start an online application. I don't know any institution that has paper applications anymore. So you'll start an online application on our website. Then from that point, you're going to complete the application with some supplemental materials, right? Your transcripts, your resume. We have 2 essays that you need to complete, a written essay as well as a video essay. You'll have a letter of recommendation, which typically is a recommendation form. So it's not a written out recommendation. It's a form that's sent to your recommender. And then if you need an English language proficiency test, you'll complete that as well. We do partake in graduate level interviews. So if you are invited to interview, that's a good sign. It means we're interested in you, but it is by invite only. Okay, so the application process is lengthy, but again, we want to make sure we're making the right decisions, not only for admissions, but for scholarships and fellowships. When we're looking at a profile, we're looking at it through a holistic lens, right? So I said your merit-based profile leads to scholarships, fellowships, graduate assistantships, in-state tuition waiver. And what does that typically mean? Well, we're looking at academic potential, right? So how are you going to perform in the classroom? Did you fail college algebra 3 times, or are you a strong academic performer? I never want to admit somebody into the cohort that I think is going to fail from an academic perspective, right? So we're going to look at your GPA, your transcripts. If you've taken a standardized test, again, students who have high standardized test scores, high GPAs, typically receive more I'll say higher scholarship packages than those who don't. Then we're also going to look at your career goals. So are you interested in supply chain management? Are you interested in HR? Are you interested in finance? Or are you interested in sports management and real estate development? We don't have any ties to the latter 2. So if that's what you're saying, and I feel like your career goals don't match with what we can offer as an institution, we're not going to admit you. And obviously, if you're not admitted, you're not getting the financial package as well. Then finally, we're looking at personal characteristics. This typically comes up in your recommendation as well as your interview. So somebody can look really great on paper, but then you get them into the interview and they are a jerk, or their career outcomes don't match what was on paper. So again, we're looking for people who can really engage in the classroom. It's a collaborative experience. When all 3 of those pair together, it makes for a really strong candidate, but a really strong financial assistance from the MBA program. So a few tips when you're thinking about submitting an application, whether it's our program or any other program, and again, this translates to your financial support, is you need to be able to explain your interests in the MBA program, right? You need to understand your reasoning and why. Do your research on the MBA program. Make sure that your interests align with what the school has, whether it's their concentrations, the curriculum, the partnerships with recruitment for external industries. It's really important to spend some time thinking about whether that institution meets your needs or not, because it doesn't matter how much money you're getting offered from the institution if they don't have the support and curriculum that you're looking for. You can show this through your written essay, your video essay, obviously your interview with the admissions team. So have some of those story points ready. Some of the things I hear in an interview is, I'm looking to do a dramatic career pivot and I feel the MBA can help me with that. I'm a high school chemistry teacher and I'm looking to pivot into marketing. I know that eventually I'd like to be a C-suite leader, and the fastest way to grow up the corporate ladder is to have an MBA. It's really important for you to think about not only life right after the MBA, but what does life look like for you 5 years from now, 10 years from now, etc. The first place that all admissions directors are going to look at is your resume, right? Because we want to make sure not only are you qualified for a graduate program, but again, does your profile match those that we're bringing into our cohort? And if you have significant years of work experience, typically your scholarship is going to match that as well. So resumes should be in a certain format. We definitely have a resume format that we prefer. This is the format that we like. So you can see the education's listed up top, right? I want to make sure that you have an accredited degree, bachelor's degree. I want to make sure that your GPA is where we'd want to be. If you had, a 2.5 GPA out of a 4.0, that would be a little bit of a red flag for us. Your scholarship offer would be much lower than somebody who has a 4.0 GPA. If your GPA is much lower, I always highly encourage you to take a standardized test, whether it's for our MBA program or any other MBA program. Again, that helps us know if you can complete the academic rigor within the program. For Michigan State, we don't require a standardized test. We do have a waiver process that you can go through. But it is really helpful when it comes to merit-based scholarships and fellowships. You can see that the work experience is really easy to read. I can understand exactly what that individual was doing at their internship or full-time position. Typically, on average, we hear that industries typically spend about 6 seconds looking at a resume. I've seen some really terrible resumes, and I will skip over that candidate if it is extremely hard for me to understand if they have a bachelor's degree, if they have any work experience. So really, your resume should be 1 page and extremely easy to read. And then, of course, you want to prepare for your MBA interview. There's been many times where I've interviewed a candidate. I'm very thick into round 1 interviews right now, and they haven't researched anything about our program. I can't tell you how offensive that is as an MBA director if you are calling our institution the wrong name, right? If you are telling somebody that you're interested in real estate development and we don't have a concentration in real estate development. If you come to an interview in a t-shirt, that happened yesterday. Somebody I was interviewing was just wearing a t-shirt. So you should be wearing business formal attire. You should be really thinking intentionally about this, like it would be any interview as a professional, right? So if you were interviewing for an internship or a full-time position, you want to approach it in that manner as well. I always say it's beneficial to use the STAR method if you haven't heard that. That means situation, task, action, result. So there's a few examples of what an interview question could be like for an MBA or graduate student interview. Again, you can see interview questions can be situational, behavioral. You really need to bookend those questions. So start with the situation, I format, and make sure you're not rambling, because there's sometimes where I interview a candidate and we can't get past the first question in the half hour that we're allowed because they're rambling and I don't understand how they're answering that question. So it's really important to make sure that you are practicing, whether you're applying to our program or any other program. The interview is probably the most important aspect of the application process, and really it leads to strong conversations regarding the scholarship committee for fellowships and scholarships. The easiest way to understand more about an institution and really their background is to stay informed, right? When you are looking at an institution, most of them will have blogs or community stories. You can absolutely find, again, some new scholarship offerings too. Typically, there's a press release. So for us, we do have a community story, basically a Broad College story board. This is what that looks like, but every single institution will probably have something very similar. Maybe read a few of those articles before you jump into a MBA or graduate student application, because fit is the biggest component, right? I can absolutely tell if somebody hasn't done their research. So now, are you ready, right? Not only are you ready to apply to a graduate program, but do you feel that you have the resources to look for some of these external scholarships, graduate assistantships, having the conversation with the Office of Financial Aid? If so, and you're interested in Michigan State, these are our application deadlines. Most MBA programs at larger institutions are not going to have a rolling admissions basis. We're going to have a deadline and a decision mailed basis. So what that means is if you applied by October 7th, you would have an admissions decision on November 11th, and so far and so forth. Most institutions are also going to have a final deadline for international candidates. Ours is round 3, so February 17th. I can't tell you how many times I speak to international candidates who miss the international round deadline and it's too late and they have to wait a whole year to apply. So make sure you're doing some research on that. There are some institutions that do have an external scholarship application. It's rare, but it does happen. So you're also going to want to pay attention to the deadlines for the external scholarship deadlines as well. Since you've attended this webinar today, we do grant application fee waivers. So I will receive the list of who attended from Seed. We will upload them into our application system, and your email address will be matched from how you registered today to when you submit your application. So again, speaking about funding, that saves you $85 if you're interested in applying to our MBA program. This only applies to the full-time MBA program, not any other graduate degree here at Michigan State. And if you continue to have questions, this is our admissions team. So of course, I'm the director of admissions, Kara Trippi. We have Kate Irwin, who's our senior associate director. You might have received emails from her if you're already in our system. And then Beth Thomas is our operations manager. She processes all of our applications. And if you have questions about transcripts or, GRE scores, GMAT scores, sending them in so we can verify them, Beth is your person. So I'm going to stop sharing there. I'm seeing that many questions came in. I'm happy to answer any of these questions to the best of my ability. And yeah, we'll go from there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kara, for such a wonderful presentation over the last 30 minutes. I think, we've covered a lot about applications to scholarships, overall funding opportunities as well. So thank you so much. I wish I was, I had a session like this a few months before I started my MBA program.
It's helpful. It's very
It is.
helpful because if you don't know, you don't know, right?
Yep, absolutely. Wonderful. So there have been quite a few questions. I had certain questions in my mind as well, but I'm going to, move very quickly and look at the Q&A tab. So friends who have mentioned some questions in the chat, I will try and get those, but if I miss them, I apologize for those. Firstly, the questions are in the Q&A tab. A lot of questions that have come to me personally and in different chat boxes are about the application fee waivers. So Kara has mentioned the application fees will be waived off if you decide to apply to MSU's Broad College of Business, and if you do that, it's only for the people who've attended this session. So using your same email address, you will be able to put that in and get the application fee waiver if you decide to apply, only if you've attended this particular event. Wonderful. I'm going to go on to looking at certain questions. Before I move on to that, I have one question. For a top US school, when I'm applying, I do think about one specific thing which has come under scrutiny or has come over the last few questions as well, which is around GMAT and GRE. Now, I know for a matter of fact that a lot of universities don't have GMAT mandatory. I think, after COVID-19, a lot of universities have gone to an optional test score. But I know that GMAT is still somewhat important when it comes to scholarships, even for universities where GMAT is not mandatory. Could you throw some light on the
Sure.
correlation between a good
Yep.
GMAT, GRE score and scholarships, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're at 100% right. I would say a large majority of institutions do not require the GMAT or GRE at this point. There's a waiver process, especially if you have a certain amount of years of work experience. Every institution is going to have a different waiver process. Some you need to have a conversation with the director of admissions so they can review your materials and then they'll grant a waiver. For us, within the application, there's just a checkbox. Anybody can apply with the waiver and we will review your application materials as a waiver candidate. So it's very easy. However, you are completely admissible to the program if you have that waiver. The biggest component that's going to happen is students that have standardized test scores, whether it's the GMAT, for us, we accept the GRE as well, are typically going to have a higher scholarship and fellowship offer because it's an easy way to evaluate a candidate's merit, right? So sometimes I see candidates who, have 10 years of work experience, have a 3.2 GPA, and they're admitted, but their scholarship offering is $7,000 a year compared to somebody who has, an 800 GMAT score, a 4.0 GPA, and 2 years of work experience, and they receive a full tuition scholarship. So typically when you're looking at GMAT and GRE, if you want to have that higher scholarship offering, you typically want to be above the university's averages. So we post our averages online. We have a class profile. Most institutions do. You'll want to be above that average to receive a higher scholarship package.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. I have going through a couple of my questions that I have prepared, which I realize a lot of students are asking them in some form or the other anyway. Kara, I'll tell you a little bit about my profile when I was applying to MBA. I did not have the best undergraduate scores, right? In certain semesters, certain subjects, I did struggle somewhere here and there. But I did try and do some online certifications, trying to combat some of my lower undergraduate scores. And when I was applying to university, I used to hear this word very often known as holistic admission process, right? And we hear schools and admission directors talk about this holistic admission process. What is the definition of the holistic admission process for starters? And will poor undergraduate scores significantly impact my chances of not only getting admission, but also from a scholarship perspective?
Yeah, so the holistic approach to admissions, right, is making sure that we're not just looking at one area of a candidate's application, right? And that could be just transcripts or just GMAT scores. We're making sure that we're seeing the whole rainbow of colors that makes a candidate, right? So somebody could have had a poor GPA. Maybe they lost a parent during their undergraduate years, and they explain that to us in the application. That makes sense why there might be a lower GPA. They take a standardized test. We see that they can excel in a quantitative method. We also feel that they've had significant work experience, whether that be they created their own startup and maybe they only have 1 year of work experience. Maybe they've been in HR for 10 years and they've had that career progression, but they have a lower GPA. They're still a valuable candidate to us. So it's really looking at all the different shades. I think international students, specifically international students, I'll say from India, because we have a lot of students conversations, a lot of triaging before that point. there's a lot of pressure put on, I'll say, the quantitative aspect of the application, and sometimes they forget the qualitative aspect, right? Telling a story through your essay, asking somebody who knows you in a professional setting to do your recommendation, making sure that you're practicing the video essay before you hit record. Those are all more qualitative based things that we absolutely look at through the application. And it doesn't matter if you have a 800 GMAT score and a 4.0 GPA, if you can't present yourself through an eloquent manner on our essays, we're probably not going to admit you, right? If you have, I want to apply to ABC University because you're awesome, but we're not ABC University, you're probably not going to be admitted. If you have your mom complete your recommendation, you're probably not going to be admitted regardless of how academic of a superstar you are, right? So that's what we mean by holistic approach. We're really looking at all components of your application equally. When it comes to scholarships, it's a little bit of a different approach, right? Because most students think scholarships are need-based, right? I have this financial need and I only make $2 a year, so I'm going to get a full tuition scholarship. That's not the case, right? So we actually typically don't take your need into consideration when we're looking at scholarships, because all of our scholarships are merit-based. So that means we are typically looking more at your quantitative based performance when we're making scholarship decisions. So when a student has a higher GPA, when a student has a higher standardized test score, when a student has significant work experience, that all goes into the scholarship conversation. So that's why I say the admissions application is intertwined, but you could be admitted even if you don't have a standardized test, but your scholarship is probably going to be less than somebody who is admitted and has, a 750 GMAT score. And these are old GMAT scores that we're referring to, right? Some of you are probably like, wait, the focus always ends in a 5. What is she talking about? Just an easy example, we didn't have any students that submitted last year with the focus, so I'm going off old scores from last year, but we are very familiar with the focus scores as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. I think that was very insightful in terms of the content that Kara just spoke about when it comes to scholarships. A lot of questions that have also come through the chat is around multiple financial aid opportunities offered by the same institution. A lot of questions come around, can I get a scholarship, which is a tuition discount, and then graduate assistantship? Are there opportunities? Yeah. So are there opportunities for more than one source? That's question number one. And on a similar front, a lot of students get, let's say, like a 10% scholarship. Is there anything that the student could do to ask for another 10% or another 20% scholarship because they want to reach their financial goals? What is your take on number one? Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Good. I'm very familiar with all of these questions. So yes, I totally understand what you're asking. So the first question is, can you receive, a multitude combined, right? Could you get a graduate assistantship and a $10,000 scholarship? Absolutely. You can get a whole combination of those, right? I see probably most commonly from our side of things in the MBA, you're getting an in-state tuition and a financial cash scholarship. So you're getting a tuition waiver and a $17,000 a year scholarship. You could also get a graduate assistantship, which automatically includes in-state tuition and a $10,000 scholarship. You could get a cash scholarship from us and find an external graduate assistantship, and you're qualified for both of them, right? Typically, I say you can't get paid to go through the MBA, right? So if you have a full tuition scholarship offer from us, we're not going to also offer you an MBA graduate assistantship, because then at that point, we're giving you money to fully pursue your MBA and then have an MBA as a full-time job. So you typically won't see full tuition scholarships and graduate assistantships paired together, but absolutely you can get a combination of different things. I have no idea who applies to external graduate assistantships. That's never disclosed to me unless the student comes in and says, hey, I got to go to my graduate assistantship at student athletics. I don't know when students get external scholarships. That does not come up or populate by any means. The only insight I have is the scholarships that we're offering through the MBA endowments. So if you get an external scholarship, and when I say external, that could be through the institution, that could be through, a third-party organization like Forte or Ramba that offers scholarships and fellowships. That's not communicated to us and we don't know. So we're not all working together to say like Bob Joe got $5,000 from Forte. We're not giving him $5,000 now. Totally separate things, and we can work with that. The second component is if you get a scholarship offer, can you come back to me or the scholarship committee and ask for more money? No one says you can't, right? I will say the thing that happens is typically we're making more offers than we have money, right? Because we know that you're applying to multiple institutions and admissions is kind of like a gambling act. Typically, we would be able to have that conversation in a more concrete matter during the last admissions round because we know who's coming and who's committing and how much money we have left in the pie, so to say. So it might be very common that you're admitted and, you reach out to me and I say, I understand, but unfortunately at this part in the admissions timeline, I can't have this discussion with you right now. Reach out back to me in May when I know how many students have committed because we don't want to overpromise scholarships and then not have the money for that. Most institutions are going to have multiple admitted candidates reach out to them asking for more money. It's the number one question that I get. So you absolutely can. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes a student will say, okay, well, I'm admitted, I'm gonna go take a GRE or GMAT. Will that enhance my chances? Sometimes it does. So it really is, again, going back to that holistic word, right? It just depends upon the candidate and where we're at in the admissions cycle.
Wonderful. I think you mentioned something very interesting about where we are in the admission cycle and how much of the scholarship pie is left. I know the simple answer to this question is yes, but I still want to ask it so that just for the benefit of the candidates in this session and watching us on YouTube, is a little around when is a good time to apply. And I know the best answer is earlier, as early as round one, or could you throw some light on when application and how does it impact A, decisions, and B, scholarships, if you don't mind?
Yeah. So the most common, I'll say the round that we receive the most application in, and this is probably really common across the board at any institution, is round 2, right? We're going to receive the most applications during that round. I would say round 1, students receive the highest offers because those tend to be the very high performing candidates. However, they're also applying at multiple different institutions as well because they can, right? They're applying to tier 1 institutions, they're applying to international institutions, and typically they're going to receive the highest financial packages because they are the 800 GMAT scores. They've been preparing to apply to an MBA for 3 years, right? And now they're finally feeling like their profile is strong enough to get into the institutions that they want to. However, that is not to say that if you apply in round 4, there's no money left. That's absolutely not the case. For example, last year in round 4, I actually offered 2 graduate assistantships and I offered a full tuition scholarship to one candidate because they were stellar. Sometimes we see those round 1 candidates who are not admitted to the dream institution, right? We can be their fallback and I'm happy to be their fallback. And they're really strong and we offer them high scholarships in round 3, right? It just really depends upon the candidate. However, for your own mental stability, right, when you're looking at this, I always say applying earlier is better. When it comes to international students, you have another big elephant in the room that we didn't even address yet, and that's your education visa. So the earlier that you apply, the earlier you'll receive your I-20 if admitted, and that means you can go to your embassy, file for your education interview for your visa to come to the United States. It does not matter. I've seen the past few years, it doesn't matter if you have a full tuition scholarship, some students are still being denied their education visa. So if you're denied early on, at least you can try to file for a second interview, and maybe it will be granted at that point. So there's many competing factors, right? Admissions decisions, scholarships and fellowships, and then for international students, getting that education visa to come to the United States, which is not always guaranteed. And it's really outside of our control at that point, no matter how much money we offer you. I've seen last year, a student with full tuition scholarship was denied multiple times. So it's heartbreaking, but that does happen. And if that happens, we can defer your admission to the following year. So, you know, not all is lost, and we honor your scholarship package at that point too. So you don't need to reapply again. Most institutions will do that if a visa denial happens for an international candidate, but these are all conversations that we're having with candidates, and always reach out to the admissions director if you have questions on this, right? It's really complicated. Every institution has a different system that they use, so always reach out. But yeah, we're not going to penalize you for applying at different rounds, but usually round one tends to have the highest academic performance students.
Wonderful. So round one is when you should try and apply, and round two at the very latest, especially if you're an international student. You can
Yes.
apply in round three and round four, though having said that, you have to also navigate your visa interview and then hope that everything comes well in time. Kara, a lot of questions have come about. I have this much CGPA, or I have come from this background. Can I do my MBA with work experience? The answer to all those questions is yes. Even if you have a lower GPA, you can do certain things. So I don't want to get into that particular question. Just for what a lot of members of the audience are asking is that, profile-based questions. So you will be able to talk to the admission director. As an ex-admission director myself, Kara, I realized that as an admissions team, we have so many resources, right? But sometimes, or in most cases, all the prospective students don't know of those, resources, be it webinars, be it connecting with current students, be it, any different types of resources that will help prospective students absolutely free of cost to learn more about the particular university. Could you throw some light on what are some of the resources that admissions teams have across the board, and how can students make the most of them?
Yeah, I think you hit on quite a few of them, right? So we do our own webinars, we do our own meet current students. We have student ambassadors as well on our website where you can see their geographical location. So maybe you are in India, or I saw some Nigerian students on the line. Reach out to one of our current students that's from Nigeria. Maybe ask about the visa process and ask how they got their visa, right? Because if they're here, they obviously got their visa. Ask about funding and maybe some external scholarship opportunities that they partake in. Those students are vetted, and they raise their hand to say that they want to speak to prospective students. So they'll give you the good, bad, and ugly without an admissions ear in hand, right? I think there's quite a few external partnerships as well. So I had mentioned Forte. That tends to be a really great resource for launch programs before you start the MBA. So that organization's really geared towards women and allies of women who are looking to advance more women into leadership roles. So they have a few launch programs that are completely free. MLT is a really good one as well. Same with Ramba, Reaching Out MBA. They focus on the LGBT community. So there are quite a few external organizations that we partner with that have really great launch into your MBA programs, right? They'll look at your resume, get it set. Maybe they'll tell you other MBA programs that you're not thinking about necessarily. I think it would be crazy to only apply to one MBA program. So as an admissions director, I always tell students to apply to multiple MBA programs and definitely look at the graduate programming websites that they have to see if they're coming to a town near you, right? Currently, my Senior Associate Director Kate is in Latin America. She was in Panama this week. She's going to Brazil. She's going to Argentina and Chile. So there's opportunities where we come to you. I know Seed does a lot of on-prem fairs in India and West Africa. So that gives you a really good chance to meet with the admissions director face-to-face and have some of those conversations that you're looking for. We always are open to emails. So if there's any question about, like you mentioned, profile things, typically it is really hard for an admissions director to say, oh, based upon your profile, you're going to be admitted and given this scholarship, because we have no idea who's actually going to apply. And we base our decisions upon the applicant pool. I also don't do pre-screening of applications because we get hundreds of applications submitted, and that just is not an equitable approach to the admissions review. But we do webinars on what you should be doing within your application. So similar to today, we'll do the 5 mistakes that applicants make, tips and tricks for nailing your interview, things like that. So engage in those things. It's really important because almost every institution is going to offer that. And it never hurts to ask if your question's not answered. So a lot of times I'll hear, oh my gosh, I'm bugging you. No one's ever bugging me when they reach out to us.
Wonderful. Sorry, Carol, I had one question that was, one of my final questions, which is also part of the Q&A tab, but that happened to be one of your topic in, some of the events that you do, which was some of the common mistakes. I know that you have an entire webinar about, common mistakes that applicants do for admissions or for scholarships, regardless. But if you can throw some light, maybe not 5, maybe try and give us 2 or 3 most common mistakes, especially from students from India or from West Africa or the Indian subcontinent and West Africa, that you see that you would like to, share, because at the end of the day, we are here because we want to apply to a top US university and we want to get the maximum chances of getting admission and some scholarship as well. So if you can throw some light, to try and wrap this session up about the 3 things you might not, that a candidate might not do.
That's a really great question, right? And I will preface by saying we actually received the most applications from Nigeria, Ghana, and India. So I'm very familiar reviewing applications from those geographical locations. You have to imagine that when we're reviewing applications, we're reviewing you based upon your undergraduate completion. So wherever you completed your undergrad, that's how we're reviewing your academic assessment. So if there's multiple candidates applying, let's say from the University of Mumbai, we're going to look at you based upon those other candidates who are also applying from the University of Mumbai. And if your GPA is relatively low, again, you want to be explaining why it's low, if there's a gap in your resume, if there's a blemish in your transcript, use that optional 3rd essay to explain that, because if we don't have any explanation, we're just going to assume the worst instead of the best, right? Because our mind is just like, oh, this student blew off the class, or oh, this student isn't employable because of X, Y, and Z. So make sure that you're using that 3rd optional essay to give us all of the information you think is important. Please don't send me separate emails. Like today, I was sent an email of a video that a student put together of a day in a life of this individual. I'm not going to review that because, again, it's not an admissions-based requirement. I always go back to equity. I want to make sure that everybody that I'm reviewing has an equitable chance based upon the application materials that we're reviewing. Another component is really not having your resume up to date. Sometimes I'll see students that have, or candidates that have 10-page resumes, and I just will not review that. It's too much information. I don't understand why they submit with that. So definitely make sure that your resume is up to par with what we're expecting in that one-page format. And then finally, make sure that you've done research on the institution. I cannot tell you how many times I will get into an interview with a Nigerian candidate, an Indian candidate, and they call us the University of Michigan, which we are Michigan State. There is a University of Michigan, but they are an entirely different university, entirely different MBA program and offerings. And that really is disheartening because, again, it makes us feel like you haven't done the research or background and you're not really interested in Michigan State, you're interested in the University of Michigan, or you're interested in another institution. So making sure those international candidates are really understanding where you're at geographically in the United States, what institution that you're applying to in the United States is really important. And the United States is massive, right? It's really on you to do that research. Like we've talked about, there's multiple opportunities to do that research. So it always leaves a bad taste in my mouth when a candidate uses the wrong institution or really hasn't done any research based upon us at all. So that's where we'd want to be. Once you're a student here as an international student, again, the Office of International Students and Scholars, is OISS, is a really, really powerful resource. They have things from how to file your taxes in the United States if you're working, right? Where to live in East Lansing, because there's some parts that might be more expensive than others. They have resource groups if you're bringing your family, English as a second language courses. So there's a lot of resources too once you are here, which is important, I think, as an international student.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. There was one question that I've been pinged a couple of times. I'm going to ask you. Sorry, I did mention that that was the last question. But are there any chances of being admitted into an MBA program if a candidate already holds a master's? What are your thoughts on this, Kara?
Yep. So you absolutely, it's common that I'll see probably about 25% of our incoming class will already have a master's degree. If you already hold an MBA, you are eligible to apply. There might be some questions about why you want to do a secondary MBA. A few years back, we did not allow that. Now we do. Every institution is a little bit different regarding if they'll admit a candidate if they already have an MBA. But in terms of already having a graduate degree, I have not heard any institution that would not allow you to apply for another graduate degree.
Sure. Wonderful. All right, perfect. I think we've covered most of the questions. I know that there are a lot of unanswered questions, 18 that I can see in the Q&A tab, and a lot of unanswered questions in the chat as well, but most of them are individual profile-based questions. So what I'd recommend is that speak to Kara or connect with someone from the admissions team. Go to MSU Broad's website, look at certain wonderful admission events that happen, be it online, be it different modes as well, and we do encourage you to apply. Thank you so much, Kara, for taking our time.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
On this wonderful weekday morning, back where you are, and very importantly, thank you to 120 of you that have stayed back and listening very keenly and intently to this insightful session that Nema Yaqub in the chat has also mentioned. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Very, very, highly appreciated of you, Kara, and everyone at MSU who have done this for us. Wish you all the best, and we will be in touch.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye. And just for everyone who's still here, we will be sending the recording of this session. It is going to be on Seed Global Education's YouTube channel as well. So in case you or your friends have missed it, please do check this out on YouTube. And we will be sending you this message or this YouTube link in your respective registered email addresses and WhatsApp number. Thank you so much and wish you all the best. Bye.